We will be using both English and Turkish in the session, so if you need translation, just make sure you get your device ready. I'm Jordi Vaquer. I'm the Secretary General of Metropolis, the global network of major cities and metropolitan areas. And it's a pleasure to welcome you all to this session about innovation-driven resilience and the way in which metropolises are leading the way in this topic. We have four participants or 4 speakers in this session. We will be having them in succession. I'm going to be presenting them as they will speak, and also as directing them questions. Just as a reminder about the topic for this session today, within the overall topic of resilience, which is a topic of this edition of the Marmara Urban Forum. There's been many discussions already yesterday and today about several aspects. I was part of one this morning about anti-fragility networks, and one of the conclusions this morning was that we have been thinking for a long time about resilience and about anti-fragility in a spirit of basically post-disaster shock, right? Something terrible happened, a flood, an earthquake, a pandemic, and then we start asking ourselves questions, and how do we make sure this either doesn't happen again, or the next time it happens is a lot less harmful. Simplifying a little bit, but I think that's generally where we come from. And then we said this morning in the session, well, if we keep saying we're entering a moment of polycrisis, of combined crisis, if we say that emergencies in local and national environments are seldom just one event, they're often complex emergencies of different things, should we not start changing the paradigm a little bit when we talk about anti-fragility or resilience, and talk more about resilience to not just the catastrophic event, but to these accelerated and complex phenomena that are putting a lot of strain on resources, on governance, on societies, all the world over. And one of the answers which connects to the topic was that if we're not planning for a particular emergency, but for unexpected, complex, combined ones, then we should go into the heart of the system. And one of the words that came out was innovation. How do we make sure that the system is ready to reinvent itself constantly? It will not be enough to get the perfect contingency plan for the exact emergency. It will be much more difficult than that. Even in earthquake-prone areas, you cannot be sure that the earthquake will not come with a food crisis and a flood at the same time. And so even those phenomena that you could more or less place and locate are probably not enough for your planning. Instead, and that was one of the conclusions this morning, we need innovation to be a habit, not an exception. And that leads us to the session this afternoon, which is precisely about this, precisely about how resilience can be the result of innovation, and how with innovation, cities are becoming less fragile and more ready for the future. So to discuss all of these things, we will start hearing João Dinis. João Dinis is the Climate Action Director of a city in Portugal, the city of Cascais, and he leads the innovation for energy transition and resilience of this city of around 216,000 residents, which receives about 1.5 million every year. It's also impacting the city. And he's currently managing over 15 internationally funded projects, and has, over the course of his career, worked on over 80 initiatives. And this has contributed to putting his city, Cascais, as one of Europe's leading cities in terms of climate action. So, João, I'll ask you about the ways in which private investors, in which the market behaviors can be influenced by cities in order to have a better uptake of more sustainable and more resilient solutions.
Thank you so much. I will actually reply to that question with a quick PowerPoint, and I'll stand up just for me to be easier seen by all of you. So as was mentioned, Cascais is a beautiful town. You're well welcomed. That's the reason why we have over 1.5 million tourists every year. And of course, it's quite challenging to manage all this cultural and natural heritage because of the climate change impacts and the vulnerabilities and the risks that we are facing. And because of that, we have concluded in our strategic plan, climate plan, over 56 projects, but we have plenty on still going. And of course, what we've learned from here is that when it comes to climate resilience, most are either nature-based solutions or green solutions or non-structural, and that's where technology comes. That's where training, capacitation, engagement of our colleagues come. And of course we can only do this if we work on network. So not just a network of cities, not just stakeholders, but of course everyone, because this is a systemic challenge. And the way that we implement this is, first of all, to bridge the gap between what technology is offering us and citizens and ourselves, the city managers. Of course, this is crucial because technology is evolving so fast, but so is climate change. And for us to act swiftly, we need to prepare ourselves swiftly. And by using this in, let's say, prioritization and contact and pioneering, we of course learn how to get positive feedback, we learn what we shouldn't do, and finally, we reduce the risks of early adoption of these technologies. And this has happened everywhere. We have, for example, the first free public transportation of Portugal for one reason, because we tested it out, we got the financials, we did the accounting, it worked well. And of course, we worked with the citizens and the service providers. Then when it comes to resilience risk, we worked with companies that provide with NWO certified sensors, meteorological sensors, that provided us with data. So that's meteorological sensors placed all over our city. And the reason why we needed that is because our national agency wasn't that keen on sharing data, and it wasn't live data, and we need that. What you see is an example of a fire that occurred a few years back, and the data that we retrieved every 30 minutes, and that red line that you see is actually the giveaway of something that happened. Was during the fire, we were able to inform our fire department that was managing that, that emergency situation, that both the wind and the temperature is changing dramatically. And so they were able to very swiftly prepare themselves. And we learned, so why not, instead of just sharing with them, sharing with everyone this information? So we've developed, for example, a platform that you see here online that you can access. That's the link, meteo.cascais.pt. And you can retrieve data for your own studies, for your own comparisons. You can do whatever you want with it, for your students, for your teachers, whatever. And we've actually learned so much that we teamed up with our Metropolitan region and did the same with the same companies, the same stakeholders that learned with us, learned new things, and now we're learning back again. So basically, we implemented the same system of meteorological sensors, but they helped us all to define, for example, an online platform for forecast of emergencies. This is not existing in the private market, and it's something that we, the cities, usually had to pay for, and now, guess what? It's available for free. You just go online, you get this information, and if you live in Portugal, you know what's going to happen. So this has to be well measured with the civil protection because we just cannot be serving warnings. Another good example of innovation is, for example, nature-based solutions that I mentioned. So what you see here is nature-based solutions that we developed. It's a greenway, a pathway that we naturalized the riverbed, and of course we helped. Our intent was obviously to have like a flooding area, natural flooding. So in the urban areas downstream, we would be a bit more safeguarded. And what happened was, for example, we had the biggest rain rate in 40 years, just 2 years after we inaugurated that. And that's me in the middle standing just 6 hours afterwards. And the biggest rain rate and flooding event that we had in 40 years had 0 damage in our infrastructure. So that's quite a win. I was very nervous that day. You can see from the photo on the right that everything was underwater with strong currents, with everything going by, but it sustained well. And of course, we teamed up with landscape architects, we teamed up with other staff, other areas of knowledge, and we used a lot of civil protection knowledge just to increase this. And we use the same information, for example, to team up with stakeholders from the health, again from the civil protection, but also for schools and tourism activities. So if, for example, if there's too much radiation, or if it's too hot, a hot day or a heat wave or something like that, automatically we have systems developed by these private partners together with us that provide us with automatic communication structures. That means if you're in an elderly center, if you get some of these hot days, you will get an information, and the center will act accordingly. It will give you more water. It will ask you to remain indoors for the heat hours, and so on. And if you're a tourist, we remind you to put more sunscreen or something like that. And the same for flooding. But that's not all. When we talk about resilience, there's something that came up last year, and it's still going on, which is energy security. So Portugal, like the majority of European countries, needs to import a lot of energy sources, right? So that's carbon-based energy sources. And for us, what we've been doing is teaming up with private stakeholders and service providers to transition into solar, because we have a lot of solar hours per year, and of course we want to do this the best way we can. And for that we're doing energy communities. Germany, Holland, they all have energy communities, but not us. So what we have to do? We had to team up with all the stakeholders from the energy sector and make sure, like, we are sitting on a table, and we had to ask the question, how are we going to transition? How are we going to go on a 180-degree route turn so we can get more renewable energy sources for our buildings in Cascais and generally in Portugal? So we, the city, actually asked this question, and we drove like a national movement to tackle this. And of course, we worked well. You see the solar panels on our public schools and our universities already starting. You see, for example, we are collecting oil, kitchen oil, and using it to produce biodiesel in a circular economy principle. And that means that we not only have diesel-powered trucks, for example, for waste collection, but we also have biodiesel, and we also have electric. And we also have hydrogen. So this is expensive, right? Well, not so much. And why don't we go for one only solution? Well, that's part of the problem that was before. So we're trying out different solutions with different stakeholders. And finally, one thing that is very important is to engage everyone, namely the citizens. So when someone is designing a city, if you work together with them, for example, if we're designing something that is highly desirable, like a green space, make sure that they are engaged from the first time, so they have the appropriation of the space. They say to themselves, this is mine, and they understand why they are working on climate resilience right from the start. So just to finish, when we talk about a resilient city, we need to transform and regenerate ourselves. We need to bring the nature, the ecosystems back into the cities for the ecosystem services, nature-based solutions, and we need to transform the way we use public space, the way we use mobility. And the only way we can do that is if we engage with all the stakeholders, because a city has such a broad range of ideas and responsibilities, but we are not aware of what's the state of the art of the technology, and private stakeholders are actually not aware of what we are trying to get, what is the priority for us as consumers or the citizens that we bring together with us. So that concludes my quick presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next on the panel, and for those of you who don't follow Turkish, you want to get ready. We'll have an intervention in Turkish by Dr. Burcu Özdemir, who's an academician who delivers postgraduate lectures in the Applied Informatics Department at Istanbul Technical University. She previously served as the director of the Smart City Department and currently holds the position of coordinator of intelligent transportation systems at Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality. Dr. Özdemir, I'd like to ask you, you've had this experience in a large city, and as the notion of smart cities evolves into the vision of future cities, what role do you envision innovation playing and shaping the cities? And another one which is connected, which is when it comes to fostering innovation-driven resilience, do you believe the size of the city confers advantages or disadvantages that we need to take into account? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Çok teşekkür ederim. Açıkçası yani bu dönemde en çok konuştuğumuz konulardan biri akıllı şehir, akıllı ulaşım gibi konular. 1960'lardan beri aslında bu tarz kavramları çok fazla konuşuyorduk. Ne konuşuyorduk? İşte sürdürülebilir şehirler, sustainable cities ya da eco şehirler, eco cities, intelligent cities, zeki şehirler. Sürekli bir kavram kargaşası vardı. Yalnız son dönemlerde daha çok akıllı şehir kavramı üzerinde birleşmiş durumda. Çünkü hepsinin özetinde de baktığınızda kesişim kümeleri aslında bir kesişim kümesinden daha çok üst üste gelen bir şeyi ifade ediyorlardı. Kaynakların etkin ve verimli kullanılmasını hedefleyen bir kavrama gitmeye çalışıyorduk. Bugün artık akıllı şehir kavramı yavaş yavaş kendini sizin de dediğiniz gibi geleceğin şehirlerini bıraktı. Şimdi geleceğin şehirlerinde baktığımızda globalde ve yerelde neler konuşuyoruz diye düşünürsek aslında UN Habitat'ın UN'in ortaya koyduğu sürdürülebilir kalkınma hedefleri hem büyük şehirler hem şirketler mikrodan makroya kadar birçok yerleşke ve organizasyon için geleceğin şehirlerinin aslında ajandasını oluşturmuş durumda. Biz geleceğin şehirlerinde 4 tane temel şeye çok kilitlenmiş durumdayız. Bunlardan ilki dayanıklılık. Ama peki bu dayanıklılığı getirecek diğer 3 etken nedir? Diğer kilitlendiğimiz hedefler nedir? Birincisi insan odaklı olması. Bir önceki sunumda da gördüğünüz gibi insan odaklı olması aslında bir kentin dayanıklılığı üzerinde çok çarpıcı etkilere sahip. Bir diğeri ekosistem. Ekosistem aslında içinde bulundurduğu bu yönetimden yaşayanına, sektöründen diğer iş kollarına kadar hepsinin bir arada rollerinin paylaşıldığı, görevlerin dağıtıldığı ve o kenti ya da geleceğin şehrini canlı kılacak yapı. Bir diğer şey ise çağımızın getirisi olan teknoloji ve veriden faydalanmak. Dolayısıyla dayanıklılığı arttıracak ekosistem, çağın getirileri olan teknoloji ve veriden faydalanma ve evrensel değerler için inovasyon yapma aslında gelecek şehirlerin ana noktasını oluşturuyor. Peki geleceğin şehirlerinde inovasyonu nerelerde göreceğiz dersek aslında yavaş yavaş da hayatımıza girmiş durumda. Tabii ki gündem konularımızdan en önemlisi biz genellikle dayanıklılığı ya da dayanımlılıklı, resilience'ı çevirirken işte felaketlerle karşılaştığımızda kentin hem bir yandan stabilitesini koruması hem de bir yerden adaptasyonunu sağlayabilmesi noktası. Bugün baktığımızda Türkiye özelinde konuşursak işte depremler, sel, taşkınlar, kapıda bekleyen bir iklim krizi, bir yandan sizin de bahsettiğiniz gibi gelen gıda krizi gibi konular önümüzde. Dolayısıyla bu süreçlerde geleceğin şehirlerinin inovasyonu yönlendirme ilk odaklandığı yer bir kere hayatta kalmamız gerekiyor. Biz yaşanabilir kentler kurarken yaşayabilir bir toplulukta yaratmamız gerekiyor. Evrensel değerler derken tamamıyla bundan da bahsetmek istiyorum. Hem geleceği hem mevcutu koruma adına odaklanması gerekiyor. İnovasyonun diğer karşımıza çıktığı konulardan biri ulaşım. Çünkü büyük metropol alanları düşündüğümüzde insanların en çok yüzleştiği noktalardan biri ulaşım. Dolayısıyla insanlar daha hızlı bir yere varmak istiyor ama bir yerden emisyonları azaltmak gerekiyor. Dolayısıyla çevre korumadan tutun iklim krizine, işte sağlıklı yaşam, sağlıklı kente kadar birçok inovasyon konusu kapımızda. Şehrin büyük olması ya da size olarak ya da işte popülasyon olarak büyük olup olmaması etkiler mi? Aslında inovasyonun konusuna göre farklılık gösterebilir. Şunu çok net söyleyebilirim. Eğer büyük bir şehirdeyseniz bir kere insan kaynağınız çok. Yetkin insan kaynağıyla oluşuyor inovasyon. Aynı zamanda finansal kaynağınız da çok. Altyapınız diğer küçük yerleşkelere göre yani sonuçta bir teknolojik altyapıya ihtiyacı olduğu için daha hızlı gelişmiş oluyor. Ama gelelim ki dezavantajlarını düşündüğümüzde yönetim çok farklı. Farklı hiyerarşik, farklı politikaların olduğu bir yerde ne kadar agile yani çevik olabiliriz. Dolayısıyla da bu da küçük şehirlerde ya da küçük yerleşkelerdeki bazı inovasyonların niye ön plana çıktığını bizlere gösteriyor. Ben çok hızlı son 3 dakikayı da böyle bir İstanbul üzerinden örnek vermek istiyorum. Bu pandemi zamanında hepimiz yani kentler olarak ya da yaşayanlar olarak globalde aynı sorunla yüzleştik. Bütün şehirler kendilerince bir çözüm ürettiler. İstanbul Büyükşehir Belediyesi ki birçok ödül de almıştır en iyi inovasyon yarışmalarındaki tuttuğu yerlerle. Bu askıda fatura, Paid Forward Project dediğimiz bir proje. Şimdi bu proje neden bu kadar inovasyon ödülleri alıyor ya da biz akademide buna niye çok bakıyoruz dediğimizde bir kere kültüründeki olan bir şeyi inovasyon olarak getirdi. Askıda faturanın arkasındaki mantık çok hızlı anlatayım bilmeyenler vardır diye. Bu pandemi zamanında günlük kazanç sağlayan kişiler lockdownlarla birlikte yani kapanmalarla birlikte para kazanamamaya başladılar. Kış vakti su faturalarını ödemeleri gerekiyor, ısınmaları gerekiyor. Dolayısıyla bir kırılgan grup oluştu. Tabii ki kültürümüzden gelen şu da sosyal dayanışma. Yıllardır var olan bir hatta Selçuklu döneminde işte sadaka taşına dayanan bir kültürü çağın getirileriyle biz nasıl ulaştırabiliriz? Bir yanda yardım etmek isteyen insanlar, bir yanda da yardıma ihtiyacı olan kişiler. Tabii ki çağın getirisi olarak bunu bir dijital platformda yardım etmek isteyenle yardıma ihtiyacı olanı bir araya getirdik. Peki bu proje nasıl çevik oldu? Tamamen az önce de bahsettiğim gibi büyük şehirlerde yetkin insan kaynağınız oluyor. Bir haftada tamamen içerideki ekipler yazdı. Dolayısıyla bir haftada ortaya çıkmış bir inovasyondan bahsediyor. Peki bu böyle kaldı mı? İnovasyonun bir de sürdürülebilir olması çok önemli. Biz askıda fatura diye pandemi döneminde başlattığımız süreç öğrenci desteğe döndü. Ekonomik koşullardan dolayı metropollerde yaşamak pahalılaştı. Daha sonrasında anne bebek paket desteklerine döndü. Maalesef ki son dönemde bir deprem yaşadık. O sıradaki oraya gidecek sosyal yardımlar için bir diğer platforma dönüştü. Dolayısıyla hem çevik, hem sürdürülebilir, hem de çağın getirdiği sorunlarla çok hızlı cevaplar üretilebilecek ve kentsel hizmete dönüştürülebilecek bir noktaya taşındı. Hani inovasyondan bahsederken de biraz hani böyle unutulup gidecek bir şey değil de sürdürülebilir olması, evrensel değerlere hizmet etmesi, onun da resilience olması gerekiyor. Şartlar değiştiğinde inovasyonun da resilience'ını, adaptation'ını sağlayıp esneye ve genişleyebilmesi gerekiyor. Pek tabii ki de bunu birçok hani büyük şehirde uygulasak da birçok ülkeye de örnek olabilir. Başka şehirlerde farklı amaçlarla da yani flexibility'de esnek olduğunu görüyoruz. Benim hani böyle çok değerli toplu anlatıp da özetleyeceğim bu şekilde.
Thank you. Thank you, and thanks also for bringing topics such as care and caregiving, which are central, I believe, to the understandings of resilience that we've got after the pandemic. Next in line, next speaker will be Laura Parry. Laura is Senior Manager of Partnerships in CDP's Cities, States and Regions team. CDP is a non-for-profit charity that runs global disclosure systems for investors, companies, cities, regions, states to manage their environmental impacts. Laura also sits on the Global Covenant of Mayors Technical Working Group for City Research and Innovation, and she has previously worked in 3 subnational governments in the United Kingdom, running business engagement and air quality programs. Laura, what does the data that cities are reporting, that CDP, together with ICLEI, you have a CDP ICLEI track, and you get all this data. What story do they tell us about the climate risks that they face, and also how, knowing these risks, they are building resilience through being innovative?
Thank you so much, Jordi, for the question, and I think it's such an important one, and I'm really glad this is the theme of this year's MARUF. We know resilience is such an important topic, particularly in cities, as cities sit at this front line of climate change and are often worst impacted by these risks and hazards when they come up. So I think it's often and always, in fact, best to hear from cities themselves in terms of the risks they face and what they're doing to deal with them. And obviously, we're joined by such panelists today. And this is really the role of CDP ICLEI Track, and the data we have is to kind of uncover what cities are saying at scale. When you can't get such distinguished guests in the room, you still get you still get to hear from the data at least what is happening in cities. So as Jordi mentioned, I work at CDP. We run this platform CDP ICLE Track with our colleagues at ICLE. And at the moment we work with over 1,000 cities, states and regions all over the world of all different sizes to report their environmental data through this platform. I'm very happy to say this includes 17 cities from Turkey, including around 43% of the national population. So well done to your cities. They're doing really good work reporting their environmental data. So what are they actually saying about resilience? And I warn you, these are not such good news at the moment. So around 80% of cities tell us that they're currently facing significant climate hazards. And this means it's not a problem for tomorrow, it's something that cities and their citizens are feeling right now today. And this is not looking to improve. So 70% of cities tell us that these risks and impacts are actually looking to get worse in the years coming. And when I'm speaking about hazards, this is a very broad range of climate hazards that we're speaking about, including heat waves, extreme heat, extreme rain, flooding, coastal flooding from rivers, etc. So it's a very broad category. But I also want to share kind of what those risks are in terms of the most likely. So the most frequently reported risk is extreme heat, and this is reported by more than half of cities. And unfortunately, we know that not all of society is impacted equally when these events occur. Cities tell us through their reporting that actually elderly people and people on lower incomes are the worst impacted. So I have some nice news after these not so positive stats. Cities are taking really meaningful action. So we know that more than half of cities have already completed a climate risk and vulnerability assessment. This sounds very technical, but it essentially means they know what risks are coming, they understand the hazards, and they know who's most likely to be impacted, so they can take meaningful action. We also know that over 60% of cities are already tackling those hazards head on, and we've heard some of these solutions already, and I'm sure we'll hear more from the rest of our panel. But it is everything from hard infrastructure, like building a seawall to reduce the risk of coastal flooding, to more nature-based solutions, such as we see in the Turkish city of Bursa with the creation of green corridors. So it's a really broad mix, and I'm very glad cities are taking action. So like I say, some positive news. So as Jordi mentioned, I sit on the Global Covenant of Mayors Research and Innovation Technical Working Group. And it sounds very, very technical and fancy, but it's essentially a group of people trying to understand what are the gaps in research and in innovation that need to be filled in order for cities to take action in light of all of these risks. And the work of this group is based on two agendas published by GCOM and by UN Habitat, the Global Research and Action Agenda and the City Research and Innovation Agenda. And these essentially outline, what do we need to do in order for innovation to happen? One of the three core delivery approaches identified in these agendas is partnerships for long-term collaboration. And I think this is so interesting because often when we think of innovation, we see like a shiny tool or some piece of technology, maybe made of chrome and glass, that will solve all the problems. And really when it comes down to it, it's about people working together and us finding more impactful and effective ways to deliver the action that we so urgently need. It's thinking outside the box. How do we work differently to what we're currently doing? So really, this is about us all thinking about how we can find new mechanisms of building partnerships across citizens, businesses, national and local governments, academia, etc. And I want to share just a couple of examples. So firstly, in terms of citizens, we have examples from Glasgow in Scotland, who in 2021 hosted a citizens' assembly. So they selected 50 citizens from across the city who were representative of their community, and they brought them together and said, what are your challenges in terms of climate change? What are your priorities? And what should we do in order to protect you as a community? And this is very different from this top-down approach we sometimes see in cities, saying this is our policy, adhere to it. The second example I wanted to raise is much more local to Turkey, and it's I'm looking so I make sure I get the name right, it's the Environmental Education and Innovation Center in Antalya. And again, forgive my pronunciation. So again, this is a space where citizens can come together, learn and engage with the current climate crisis and wider environmental issues, and it really shows that engagement with communities. On the business side, I wanted to mention an initiative that we run jointly with C40 Cities and the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. So this is a network of around 20 cities globally who are all finding ways to work together with each other and also with their local business communities to build non-commercial city and business partnerships. So this is not a traditional public-private partnership you might be familiar with. It's really looking at what resources, capacities, which skills do I have in my city within the businesses, and how can I leverage them to achieve our climate goals. So it's a small group of businesses who set a joint target on climate with their city and then work together to find solutions. One example of this I'd like to share from Boston in the United States. So they have a partnership called the Boston Green Ribbon Commission. And this is a group of businesses, including some real estate companies, so those who own or run large buildings. The city has a very ambitious net zero target around building emissions, and so they worked with the operators and owners of those buildings and said, what do we need to do to regulate you? Received some recommendations on how to set an emissions cap for buildings per square foot, and this emissions cap was suggested by the businesses and then unanimously voted in by the council, and it will dramatically reduce the city's emissions by 2025 from 60% of the city's square footage of buildings. So it will have a really massive impact, and all that research and testing and everything was delivered by the businesses and then vetted and tested and approved by the council. So it didn't take a whole team within the council to deliver that work. We know cities lack capacity. And I think this is a really nice example of how businesses can support their city governments by giving additional capacity, expertise, where they may not have it in-house to really accelerate action towards these shared goals. So yeah, I'd say it's interesting. We're all speaking maybe more about the people side of innovation, and love to continue to discuss that further.
Excellent. Thank you. And to finalize this first round, we've got our last speaker, Nicholas João, who's the Executive Director of the Guangzhou Institute for Urban Innovation in Guangzhou, China. The institute is the thought leader for the Guangzhou Award for Urban Innovation, and it's dedicated to the sharing of knowledge, expertise, and experience from urban innovation to accelerate the local implementation of the global agendas like SDGs and others. And I'd ask you about your experience with the Guangzhou Award for Urban Innovation. It's just completing the 6th cycle. It just did last month. And I understand there were hundreds of submissions from all over the world, really. Which initiative or initiative struck you as being particularly innovative, the one that exemplifies in its approach the best way to make cities or metropolitan areas more resilient?
Thank you very much, Jordi, for that question. Indeed, we just completed the shortlisting of the 6th cycle for the Guangzhou Award. But what I would like to just say as a matter of introduction is that over the 6 cycles, we've had over 1,200 initiatives from over 100 countries. And there are certain trends and lessons that I think that can be learned from looking at all of these initiatives. And they join very much what my previous speakers were saying. I would just like to share a few of the highlights of the lessons that we have learned. One is that we have to put people first. That is absolutely clear. Innovation works best when we really don't leave anybody behind. Another one which is rarely talked about is the pursuit of excellence. Is that we can't just accept business as usual, which unfortunately most of our public sector contracts and procurement systems always choose the lowest bidder, right? But I think we have seen a trend where cities that really begin to innovate are pursuing excellence at every level, be it at the human resource level, at the financial level, at the technology level. Another one, also mentioned by the previous speakers, building coalitions and effective partnerships, right? Nobody has the solution by themselves today anymore. The last two, one is continuous learning, the ability of an organization to continuously learn from what it is doing, right? We all commit mistakes, and it's the ability to learn from those mistakes that will be able to enable a city to push the envelope further. And the last one I think is the most important one, is the ability to recognize leadership at all levels. That leadership can come from the community, it can come from the private sector, it can come from your schools, it can come from anywhere. So that's as a matter of introduction over what we have learned in running this Guangzhou ward for the last 12 years. But I would like to share a story with you that was one of the finalists this year. The jury will be meeting in a month's time, so I don't want to predict what the jury will decide, but it is a story where I think is going to point a lot to the future. During the pandemic in Guangzhou, Guangzhou has 11 districts. Each district has a mother and child hospital. And we also have a very decentralized healthcare system where we have community doctors at the neighborhood level. And it became very rapidly apparent that a particularly vulnerable segment of the population were pregnant women, especially after the 3rd month of pregnancy. So the city decided, together with all the medical staff, to provide pregnant women with a small kit where they could do the most routine checks at home, send the results using the mobile phone, and with the help of AI, to look for any anomalies in those tests. And if the AI did detect an anomaly in a test, it would immediately alert a doctor or a medical professional to contact the mother-to-be. And not to urge her to go to the nearest hospital or healthcare center for help, but to go to the safest one. Because of course, all of this was geolocated, so we knew where the woman was living, where she was working, where she was shopping, and where she could seek further help. Averaging about 150,000 pregnancies a year in the city of Guangzhou, over a period of a year and a half, not a single pregnant woman caught COVID. So they thought that this infrastructure was pretty impressive. They said, how can we use it? How can we exploit this infrastructure for other purposes? Now, we have a particular problem in East Asia. It affects particularly China, Korea, and Japan, and that's neonatal jaundice. It also happens everywhere else in the world, but usually it disappears by itself after 3 or 4 days. For some reason, genetic reason, East Asians, there are many, many more severe cases, which only are detected after 7 or 8 days, and if not detected in time, can become life-threatening, and the treatment extremely expensive. The treatment involves blood transfusion. Imagine what that means for somebody who just got born and the parent. So they adapted the infrastructure to help mothers monitor for neonatal jaundice during that critical 15, 20-day period after they return home after giving birth to the child. And again, over a year and a half, not a single case became serious. They were able to prevent any serious cases from happening. So basically the system paid for itself. Because you can imagine what the cost of hospitalization and blood transfusion is for treating this illness. So the third step is now they will extend this infrastructure to monitor the child's health and well-being for 18 years. First of all, let me explain, this is a voluntary system. The parents have to have the option to opt in or not. But so that's what's happening on the ground. That's factual. Now I'm going into fiction. And I repeat, I'm going into fiction because it's my personal agenda, and I'm trying to convince the health authorities in Guangzhou to go to the next step. And the next step is for that newborn child to have a digital twin. Because we have the genetic makeup of the child, we have the genetic makeup of the mother, we have the medical history of the parents, we know where they live, we know where they work, all right, etc. Now, why create this digital twin? First of all, by creating a digital twin of a newborn child, I can accelerate its growth. I can make it grow every month 5 years and see if any serious illnesses happen, right? And if they do, I have an early warning system, right? A system that will tell me, look, this child risks an illness at the age of 7, so let's start monitoring what's happening at the age of 6. So that's one aspect. The second aspect, which is more important and more interesting for me, is that the digital twin is not drinking Coca-Cola, is not eating McDonald's, it's not living in a polluted environment, it has a stress-free existence, an ideal existence. If the real-world child falls ill, without the digital twin falling ill, then there's a very high probability that that illness, the cause of that illness is not medical, that it's a social determinant of health. It's a lifestyle determinant, or a work environment, or a pollution. That is something that we do not have the ability to do today. The child doesn't feel well, the parent has no alternative but to seek medical advice. It's not correlated with all the other data that we have today, the living conditions, the housing conditions, the working conditions, the lifestyle conditions. So if this, I'm trying to push the authorities to do this on a prototypical scale, because my simulation shows me that a healthcare system could save billions per year, because we go really from curative to preventative healthcare and well-being. So that's one of the examples of the 15 that we obtained this year. It's it's one that really excited me very much, and I just wanted to share it with you here.
Thank you. Thank you. It is indeed an inspiring example. So I'd like to, well, first of all, there is an app that allows you to ask questions via the app. It has not been the most popular system of asking questions in the sessions I've sat in, but I need to remind you that you could do that. You could also wave, and I'd see you, and we could bring your question in. We've got another 20 minutes. I'd like to start with some questions that may provide a thread, and then also, as I ask mine, you could think about your own in the audience. The intuitive way, if you knew nothing about fragility, to think about fragility is, the more robust and solid and stable something is, the least fragile. And then you think earthquakes, and you say no. Because even ignorant people like me who know nothing about the construction of earthquake-resistant buildings, you know that the whole skill is in making them a little bit flexible. Flexible enough that they will not crumble when the earth shakes, right? And I think that's a powerful image of how, in fact, resilience is about flexibility. And one way of being flexible is being innovative. But there is a little bit of a paradox, which is, how do you institutionalize innovation? How do you institutionalize anticipation? Because the business of government is to produce some regular processes. If they constantly innovate, that also creates some uncertainty. So the first question I would throw to you is, obviously, you've talked, Cascais is obviously an innovative environment. It's not once that you had a good idea and did something interesting. As we saw, this is a standard way of operating, being innovative. Also, Nicholas, you were talking about a city that actually has made innovation one of its hallmarks, Guangzhou in China, and other places. So how do you see this can one institutionalize innovation and how? That would be one question. The second one is related to it, which is, there's the pilot, there's the great example, there's the great idea, and then there's resilience. And they are very far, because first you need to go to scale, and then you need to reach the point where really the city, the population, the territory are more resilient. So how do you see this pathway from the success in the pilot to actual transformation that makes city more resilient? And finally, some of you were talking about really interesting public-private partnerships. But public-private partnerships, if we look critically at past practice, have been building fragility in many places. And some people would say, when they hear public-private partnership, they will think sprawl, they will think cost of housing crisis, they will think slums that were supposed to be redeveloped and actually grew because private interests did not address properly the problems. So how would you reassure, how would you say, actually, this is how this innovation will come with the private sector, and, very important, private profit, private interest will not take over the common good? So there's three questions. One is, can one institutionalize? Second is, and related, how do you go from pilot to the scale that's needed to build resilience? And the third one, how do we reassure those who have grown suspicious, let's say, of the role of actors motivated by profit in building resilient cities? And we can see if there's an immediate question before we go to the round of answers. Is there one? There is a question? No? Okay, there'll be an opportunity also to ask, but let's hear your thoughts. Does anyone want to start first? Laura, can I invite you to start? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm happy to start. Well, these three questions are still in my head. This is the main trick.
You can address only one of them, or you don't need to address all of them, of course.
So I think in terms of how do you have this kind of agility and move away from having structure, I think we need to look outside of the boundaries of one city and look around and think, okay, what's everybody else doing? Because otherwise we get so stuck on what we're doing ourselves in our own city. And I think, so I used to work for one of the local authorities within London in the UK, and one of the most useful things is we had twin town relationships with other cities, and we'd see, what's Oslo doing, what are other cities around the world, and that was the most valuable thing, because it meant we didn't need to try things out all of the time. We could be more responsive and say, we know this city has done that, we've seen it's worked, and we can apply it or not, and you kind of miss out some of those stages. In terms